Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I would like to welcome you to today's board meeting. First, I need to establish that we have a quorum. So I want to welcome our members that are participating via Zoom. Curator Lehman, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Whoa.
Nice. You are very loud today. Curator Blitz, can you hear me?
Oh, say you can hear him. Put me up. Here.
Thank you. Okay, before we get started, we would like to ask Curator Winokur to lead us in the pledge.
Okay. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Curator Winokur. As is customary, I will start with the chair's report. Excuse me. Good morning, everyone. First and foremost, we'd like to thank Chancellor Agarwal for providing us with a great reception last night and allowing us to meet some of your fantastic faculty, staff, and your team all together. We also want to thank the students that could make it last night and for sharing with us all the great things that they're working on doing and learning. We appreciate your hospitality, and since this is home for me, I will apologize that we did not, actually home for Todd and I, and Fry. We will apologize that we did not provide anyone with barbecue, as we know that you all want Kansas City barbecue since it's so outstanding. But our first order of business is to recognize the Curators, Distinguished Professors from UMKC. The first professor has joined me. And I'd like to introduce you to Professor Tina Nemi. Dr. Nemi was named a Curators Distinguished Teaching Professor and is a professor of geology. Her teaching and research focus on recurring natural disasters such as hurricanes, tsunamis, and earthquakes. She's a proven mentor and has overseen 7 PhDs, 16 master's degrees, and 57 undergraduate research projects. Her work has seen her receive multiple NSF grants designed to train Kansas City teachers and promote the success of students of color in STEM disciplines. Recently, she led a project focusing on Guatemalan hazards that have been recommended for further NSF funding. She has been the recipient of 2 Fulbright Specialist Awards, the UMKC Award for Excellence in Mentoring Undergraduate Research, and is a fellow with the Geological Society of America. Please give a round of applause for Professor Nemi. Now, we have to pose for a photo, but he's got a telelens, apparently. Thank you so much. Okay, now our next recipient was very nice and told me that I could either refer to him as, in Germany they called him Max or Massimo, and here they call him Max, but I'm actually going to try to get this right and say Massimiliano Vitellio. Did I get it right?
Perfect.
Okay, and so he was very nice explaining to me how I couldn't mess that up, and it worked, I think. Dr. Vitellio is our Curators Distinguished Professor and the Norman Royal Professor of History. His expertise lies in ancient history with an emphasis on Roman Empire and the transformation of the Mediterranean region. He's published 5 books and, and co-edited a 6th, including a historical reconstruction of the life of 6th century leader whose failures culminated in the Gothic War. Dr. Vitelio has received 16 international awards, scholarships, fellowships, such as the DAA Fellowship and the Heinrich Hertz Fellowship. He also earned 7 UMKC awards, such as the Trustees Faculty Scholar Award and the Normal Royal Professorship. I want to congratulate Professor Vitelio, and I want you guys to know that he is so dedicated to his students that he's like, do you guys mind if I sneak out as soon as we're done, because I have a class that starts in an hour. That's dedication to your students, and we appreciate all that you do. Thank you. Oh, we forgot to do your award. Oh, sorry. Okay, tell Olin's guys over here now.
Thank you.
Next, we will have the president's report.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Williams. Let me begin by introducing the new leaders at the UM system. We have Dr. Leah Cohn, who has stepped up to become the interim dean at the College of Veterinary Medicine. Matt Sanford, a longtime leader at MUR, has been named the executive director. And Dr. Angela King-Taylor is now serving as the interim vice chancellor for student affairs, taken over that position for Bill Stackman, who is now at Harvard University. Dr. Samuel Frimpong is a faculty who is now also the vice provost of graduate education at SNT. And Bella Carr-Gerlich is the dean of libraries at SNT, and she comes to us from Texas Tech University. On top, we have Mr. John Danker, who is the chief marketing communications officer at the UM system, as well as the vice chancellor for communications and marketing at Mizzou. And he joins us from a long-time leadership post at University of Arizona. And John Danker is here. John, can you stand? Thanks, John. So let me begin with student success. And at UMSO, Palak Sandhi is a PhD student who was invited to participate in the Lindau Nobel Laureate Conference in Germany. She participated with about 500 other students, meeting 40 Nobel laureates to talk about the new frontiers in science, especially in chemistry and physics. Daniel Archibong is a second-year dentistry student, and he is here with us. He placed in the second place at the National Dental Association Research Competition. And Daniel was here. And Daniel, where did you go to college, by the way? Where? All right. Well, anyways, you're doing a great job here. We love Kansas students when they come to our universities. But Daniel, thank you and congratulations. As the oldest and recognized as the top journalism school in the United States, our students are winning major competition. Both Eli Hoff and Ella McCarthy finished in top places at the Hearst Journalism Awards for student journalists. So we're very proud of them. Last but not least, Walid Adas, an undergraduate aerospace engineering student, won the gold prize at the International Invention Exhibition for his invention called PlantBot. And what this does is it's a robot that recognizes, using machine learning, the type of plant that it encounters and then identifies how much nutrients and water that it needs. And this won the top prize. This year, our university welcomed new and continuing students to the tune of almost 60,000 full-time students. And move-ins were made possible by volunteers from our many offices throughout the universities to make that move-in process as seamless as possible, followed by many important traditions at the four universities. And we're very proud of the fact that they are continuing their studies, as well as the fact that they are joining us for the first time because they recognize the high value of education at our universities. In terms of our statistics, first-time college students at all four universities increased this year. And given the demographics that we're seeing in the state and the regional areas, this is a major accomplishment. And this is something that I do not want to go unnoticed. In terms of our transfer students, we had UMKC and S&T both have increases. We saw some reductions in MU and UMSL, but we are developing new approaches by engaging with our community college partners early so that we can recruit the students with scholarships as well as introducing the students to new opportunities at our four universities. The fall retention rate, as you can see, have hit a historic high at Mizzou. We're now, it should be 91.4%, and that's a significant increase. It's the first time we cracked the 90%. At UMKC and S&T, they've seen an increase compared to the prior year, and there's been a decrease at UMSL. The fall retention rates really serve as the leading indicator for the overall graduation rates, whether it's at the 4-year, 5-year, or 6-year. And 6-year is the benchmark. And at Mizzou, we hit another historic high, increased at S&T and UMSL, and a slight decrease at UMKC. This is something that I am very proud of. The fact that we've seen increases in our Pell graduation rates at all of our four universities. This doesn't happen by accident. I have to thank the provosts that lead the academic programs, as well as the deans and the advisors that have implemented new technologies and new approaches to ensure that students are retained semester to semester, year over year, and then they graduate on a timely fashion. So we're very proud of this. This year, we've hired more than 275 full-time faculty throughout the four universities. Those are the numbers that you see for Mizzou, UMKC, S&T, as well as UMSL. And it's also broken down by tenure track, and non-tenure track, but full-time faculty members at the university.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
I don't remember seeing this before, and I really thought this was interesting. How do you, and I didn't give you notice, so you may not have the numbers, but how would this track looking towards last year? I'm assuming this is a big increase.
This is not a tremendous increase. Okay. I know the numbers for MU, and we're probably about 20 more than we were last year, but we're hiring more tenure and tenure track faculty because of Mizzou Forward.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you. And the faculty members are joining an outstanding group. And in terms of faculty success, Professor Coble in the School of Education at UMSL was appointed to the National Park System Advisory Board. And this is a very important position for Professor Coble. At UMKC, Professor Sarah Dallas, professor in the School of Dentistry, was awarded fellow status. To become a fellow, one has to serve with distinction in terms of research, outreach, and education, and there's only a small percentage of all members of an organization that become fellows. And Professor Dallas is here. Professor Dallas, can you stand to be recognized? Congratulations. And at Mizzou, Chris Stalbert, the Dean of Kaffner, was elected president of the Institute for Food Technologists. This is an organization with 20,000 members, and it goes to show that our deans are still active in their profession, as well as contributing to research, education, and teaching. And Chris Stalbert is here as well. Chris, congratulations. And you probably know this, but Missouri S&T has one of the top petroleum engineering programs in the country, petroleum engineering as well as mining and minerals. And Professor Bao Junbai was elected or selected for the Distinguished Award for Lifetime Contributions from the Society of Professional Engineers for his contribution. Moving on, in terms of major grants, at these meetings, I provide an update on grants that are over $1 million. But this particular period saw a significant number of grants over $1 million. So I'm going to go through some of them here at UMKC. Professor Ted White, he's directing a $4 million project that involves a nationwide study of data gathering with analytics to determine if there's a correlation or determine what that correlation is between fungal infections and extreme weather events. And you've seen what's happened around the country in terms of extreme weather events, but if that has an impact on fungal infection, this is a study that will find that correlation. We also have Professor Michael Pragman, who is developing a pre-K to 12th grade teacher training program to deal with challenging situations, especially coming out of the COVID pandemic, and to achieve positive learning outcomes for our students. Last but not least, we have Professor Jackie Howman, who has developed a U.S. Department of Transportation project that will model the environmental impact based on infrastructures that are used for transportation. And all three faculty members are here. So if you can stand. Thank you. So there's $10 million worth of grants among the three faculty members, but more important than the numbers, they're going to make an important contributions to these various areas of learning that advance our understanding of our world. I'm going to go through very quickly. Next up is Professor Wendy Picking, who was a Mizzou forward hire. She received a $12 million NIH project to learn more about infectious diseases and training the next generation of leaders. And there's a theme, research that's used to train next generation of leaders that are at the graduate and the undergraduate level. You may know that Mizzou is known as the home of swine genomics research, and it got even stronger because of Professor Randy Prather's project to develop new techniques to use genetically modified pigs, not only for human consumption, but also for biomedical research use. This is also combined with a $3 million grant from NIH for Dr. Ki-Ho Lee, who's going to be advancing new approaches of using swine models to discover new disease models that can be used in humans for comparative medicine. Professor Michael Chapman of biochemistry received a $4 million grant to be able to learn about how to use gene therapy and target it for disorders such as hemophilia and cancer. Professor Laura Schultz from our OBGYN department is going to study a very important problem for, I think it's called preeclampsia. And this is the leading cause of maternal mortality, not only in the United States, but worldwide. And her innovative cell culture technique can be used to better understand this devastating disease. Professor Matthew Moshman from Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering, who received his undergraduate degree at Mizzou, received the second NRT. NRT is the most important training grants for scientists and engineers. The first NRT grant was awarded to UMKC last year, but this would train 60 doctoral students on new advances in materials development and materials processing. At S&T, Professor Philip Whitefield, who is an expert on combustion, will be using different types of fuels, both conventional fuels and alternative fuels, to examine the efficiencies and, more importantly, emissions that are emitted during the combustion process for these projects. And that's supported by U.S. Department of Transportation. Last but not least is UMSO and Dr. Rachel Winograd. You've seen her being presented at like it's either every one or every other one, but her colleagues, Dr. Winograd and her colleagues, are making an important contribution for opioid addiction prevention, as well as the training that is needed for healthcare providers. And she works very closely with Dr. Holly Hagel here at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. These are others that I didn't have time to include. These are grants that are typically below $3 million, but you'll get a sense of the important work that our faculty members are doing across the university, with particular emphasis on medicine as well as CAFNR. In terms of our federal R&D expenditures, what I'm showing you in the upper right corner is the percent increase from 2016 to 2023. Beginning in fiscal year 2017, the board charged university chancellors to measure proposals, awards, and expenditures. So from that time, we've seen significant increases at the three universities for research projects, as you can see from this graph. If we look at total sponsored expenditures, like the projects that were awarded to Dr. Rachel Winograd, you can also see that UMSO has done very well. Their work is community-engaged research and scholarship, and all three universities have seen a significant increase in this area. Last but not least, I'm going to provide the philanthropy totals, and beginning in the November meeting, I'm going to use the fiscal year 22 as the cutoff so that we don't have that $359 million that actually just destroys the axes. But as you can see, we're doing well at the four universities. Significant increase year over year at UMKC. And that's due to the hard work of the chancellor and the administrators that are actively promoting the programs that require investments. So with that, that concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions from the board for President Choi? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we move on to the consent agenda. Are there any questions from the board regarding the consent agenda items? Hearing none, may I have a motion and a second for the board to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as written. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Hearing none, the consent agenda is adopted. We now turn over to the Finance Committee. And so, Curator Graves, I will now turn the meeting over to you.
All right, thank you, Chairman. Good morning. The Finance Committee has one information item and two action items today. Executive Vice President Ryan Rapp will introduce the fiscal year 2023 investment performance review, and Tom Richards, the university's Chief Investment Officer, will review the performance and returns.
Good morning. Thank you for an opportunity to present. I wanted to just start off by introducing Jeff McClellan to talk about his firm, Veris Investment Advisory Services, who is the university's general consultant.
Thank you, Tom. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. My name is Jeff McClain. I'm CEO of Veris. I also have the pleasure of being the senior consultant assigned to the University of Missouri system. Veris is a consulting firm that has really two primary missions. One, we are the advisors to the curators on your investment portfolio. Most of our time we're spent supporting the university investment office and all of the investment decisions that they have to make on your behalf. As part of your governance structure, I am one of the three signatories that signs off on all investment decisions that are made with respect to managers in your portfolio on a regular basis. Our firm advises about $750 billion among friends, and we have 4 offices here in the United States with 95 employees.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. And again, Veris is a partner to the staff, a very good, productive relationship. So in your board materials, I realize there's a tremendous amount of information. We're not going to go through all the detail, but we're going to go over a few high-level points on some slides, and then happy to answer any questions that you have. So just briefly, again, we're managing about $11 billion of investment exposures, been pretty consistent with markets over the past couple of years. Getting into the FY23 activities, so this just give you a sense of the flow-throughs, the roll forward of each of the pools. So with the retirement plan, we put in about $146 million in contributions. We had $312 million in benefit payments go out the door. So those are the things that we're managing in terms of the cash flows going through. Of course, there was investment income as well, getting to our ending balance. The endowment pool is the same thing. We've got contributions, gifts going into the endowment. These are actual cash gifts being funded. So that number was about $96 million for the year. And then the payouts coming out, the spending supporting the scholarships, faculty positions, et cetera, about $87 million. And then obviously, again, investment income. Just as a reminder on the endowment pool, for all four of the universities, the spend rate is 4% a year, and that's applied to a 28-quarter average market value balance. So it smooths it out, protects those distributions through different market cycles. So again, we're long-term investors, so I wanted to start with this and maybe just go to the 10-year point. So at the end of June, the 10-year return, the retirement plan, 7.5%. The board's policy benchmark was 6.8, endowment pool very similar, 7.7 and 7.4. The market, so FY23, as you all know from your own personal finances, was a roller coaster. This line just kind of recaps the orangish line above represents the global equity market during the year on a cumulative basis, and the blue line represents the global bond market. So equities had a huge roller coaster. I mean, back at the end of this time last year, things were looking not great, but equities had a strong rally, ended up being 16% up. Bonds globally relatively flat because of rising interest rates. So performance, at a high level, my main point on this slide is just to say asset allocation drives returns. Our portfolios are designed to protect on the downside, and in exchange for that, we're willing to give up some return on the upside when markets are rallying. So the point being, in full transparency, FY22 markets were down. We had fairly significant outperformance relative to any number of measures. FY23 stocks rallied. That goes against the positioning in our asset allocation, so we underperformed those similar measures. But the key thing I'd say is to look at it on a 3-year basis, which is again another example of why we don't look at one-year returns, because you can have really good years and really bad years. The key is to look at it over a longer term horizon. So even with that sort of volatility on a 3-year basis, retirement was at 9.7% over a policy benchmark of 7.7, endowment 10.1 over a benchmark of 8.5. What do those other numbers mean? So just as an example, a global passive portfolio, so a passive stock holding and bond holding, retirement outperformed that by 4.2%. That equated over a 3-year period to $516 million of outperformance. So again, long-term returns are most important. Depending on how markets are doing, our asset allocation will again excel in down markets, and it will lag behind a bit when markets are strong. Asset class returns, just to highlight a couple things that stand out. Commodities is one. It's the one thing that was down, not the only thing, but the one thing that was down significantly this year. Look in the retirement plan, commodities were down 8%. But I wanted to point out that in FY22, commodities were up 29%. In FY21, commodities were up 48%. So every asset class has its place depending on what's going on in markets, and the key is to get the diversification put together into building a portfolio. The other thing I just point out, portable alpha, or the alpha portfolio was down 1.3%. Sorry, my vision is fading. There's a lot of reasons behind that, but again, I would point out with the alpha portfolio in FY22, the alpha portfolio was up 7.5% when the entire rest of the portfolio was down 2.6. So again, the key to building the portfolio is to have things that work together that are diversifying to one another so that one can perform well, hopefully, when others are not. General pool, again, this is the university's working capital. The return on that, we break it down into 3 different portfolios depending on liquidity. That's all matched the liquidity needs of the university, but the total general pool was up 3.7% versus the benchmark of 1.4. Retirement plan. So we like to give some guidance to the extent that we can. The retirement plan for the purposes of contributions is measured on a September 30th year end. So we've got to get to the end of the month. So I can give you an update generally of where we were through the end of July. So that would be the 10 months ended July 31st. That's the pension year. We were at about 7.8%. Now our return target is 7, so that's good, right? But August looks like we were down about 1.5%, so that takes us back down below 7. So it'll depend on where markets end up in September. But obviously we want to be as close to or in excess of that 7% return target. And happy to answer questions.
Yeah, you referenced benchmark several times. What is your benchmark and how do you derive that?
So the board enacts the asset allocation policy, which sets targets for each asset class. And then each asset class is assigned a benchmark. So a market benchmark that's established sort of ahead of time. It's outlined in the policy. There's an approval process in place. We publish that every quarter with the reports that we put out to the board. So it's just like for equities, the benchmark would be that global passive index. So we're trying to beat that. With treasuries, it would be a common treasury index. So each asset class has a specific benchmark, and there's an approval process in place similar to hiring managers, where if that benchmark is ever changed, it has to go through the same approval process, and any change in the benchmark has to get reported to the board.
Okay. Jeff's on the phone. I think he texted me. He had a question.
Yeah. Yeah, can you go back to that last slide, please, Tom?
Yeah.
Just want to make sure I'm following you. Yeah, so on the left side, no, the other one, you had it, sorry.
Can you go back to the...
There we go, yeah. So I'm just curious, year-to-date calendar year. So on the left, you see quarterly performance. That's through March 31st and through June 30th. So when I say year-to-date, just roughly through the June 30th, it looks like you'd add those 2 quarters together, right? Those are quarterly numbers. And that, basically, I think it's the first time I've seen you show us quarterly, which I appreciate. It helps me understand. Is that accurate?
As being quarterly performance numbers?
Yeah. So that's the first time I think you've shown us that. Like I said, I'm just kind of curious as far as year to date through June 30th. And it looks to me like you've got two of those quarters quoted. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm not exactly following. I think we're looking at the same slide.
I'm losing.
This is
I think his question, Jeff, jump in, or Curator Lehman, jump in if I'm not clarifying it correctly. I think he's just asking, is it new to see the quarterly performance in your materials? I think that's what he was trying to ask. I may have misunderstood it. But
okay. No, I mean, actually, this slide we present every year when we give the board an update. It's always a thing we close on because it's always of interest to know where we are versus the pension plan target.
Yeah, I have one more question, Tom. And I apologize, you were talking, it wasn't coming through, but we have talked about this maybe a year or so ago or a couple times. I'm curious, have you reduced your exposure to China with everything going on, or are you still looking at a similar allocation?
No, actually, we've dramatically cut back our exposure to China, both on the equities front. We also stopped probably at least 2 years ago. There's no more private investment going in. Obviously, there are all kinds of issues there across the institutional investment space, but we have definitely pulled back on the exposure to that.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Bob, did you have any questions?
Yeah, Tom, first of all, I want to thank you and Ryan Rapp for distilling down that 90-page monolith into something that somebody with limited intelligence can understand. And I appreciate your indulgence with my questions. I do have two. Do we have any comparable peer institutions that we compare our investment strategies with?
So I'd say the general point is that we're looking at larger peer universes, which Verus provides to us, where we track in the public pension space, it's about 450 peers. In the endowment space, it's about 350. So partially we want to see how are we looking versus a broad universe. Now on the retirement side, in terms of comparing to someone else, you got to find someone that's got the same plan structure, liability structure that we do, because that really drives your asset decisions. Now on the endowment side, I would just tell you what I look at. In particular, other public universities that have endowments of a similar size or larger. So we look a lot at other Big Ten universities, some of the universities in the SEC, some in the Big 12, but public institutions that have an investment office where they're running $1 billion or more. And we get that data. I'm a member of a peer group for CIOs that sort of are in the Midwest, and they do share that together with that group. But again, everyone has different objectives, everyone has a different appetite for risk, but you do want to see where you fall within the peer universe.
Second question, portable alpha. Can you explain that in shirt sleeve English?
I will try. So first of all, I'd say what we're really talking about is an alpha portfolio. These happen to be hedge fund vehicles, but the investments in that alpha portfolio are highly specialized to try to produce returns that are not related to what's going on in markets. So like regardless of where the equity market is or where the bond market is, you have these very technical strategies that are designed to extract returns no matter what else is going on in the market. So as evidence for that, I mentioned last fiscal year that alpha portfolio returned over 7% when the entire rest of the portfolio was down 2.6. So that's the first point, is it's a very diversifying investment stream into the portfolio. Now what portable alpha allows us to do is to stack that on top of another asset return. So just as an example, and if I get too deep, stop me. But
You're too deep.
well, here's a way to think about it. Back in 2017, we wanted to put U.S. Treasuries into the portfolio because Treasuries are very diversifying, and they're stabilizing the portfolio when in recessions, et cetera. Treasuries were not returning much in terms of asset allocation, so they weren't very attractive from a return perspective. The alpha portfolio is not designed to hit home runs out of the park either. In general, as generalized terms as possible, the portable alpha program is a way to stack two things like that on top of each other, so that with the same amount of capital, we can get the exposure to the Treasury market as well as this alpha stream. But at the end of the day, in the portfolio, whether it be alpha or commodities or Treasuries, we try to build a portfolio that has as many different diversifying return streams as possible. The portable alpha program just allows us to pack more in a capital efficient way.
In one
Hey, Tom.
sentence.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Bob. Sorry.
In one sentence, describe the objective of portable alpha.
The primary objective is to get the diversifying return stream of the alpha portfolio, is to be able to get that into the portfolio overall.
So portable alpha is different than alpha.
One is just the program and how you do it.
Okay. All right.
We
nice
can
try. Okay. Okay. I'll see if I can't figure this out on my own.
Any other questions?
Jeff had one.
Jeff?
Yeah, if you don't mind, Todd, I can hear him now. Tom, can you go back to that? And I want to clarify my question. you can go back to that one slide, please.
The, the one that's up, or,
The last slide.
yeah,
There you go. So basically, this, I had it. Yeah, the retirement plan through June 30th is up, the 2.1 plus the 1.1,
right.
or is that all annualized?
Those are quarterly returns. And so
Okay, so they are quarterly, they're not annualized. Gotcha.
Yeah, and Curator Lehman, we're presenting it that way just because we're trying to build toward the pension plan year end, which is September 30th. So it's,
Yeah, it's very helpful.
Yeah.
I was just trying to make sure so basically, if I want to look at 2023 year-to-date as of June 30th, it's 2.1 plus 1.1. So it's 3.2 versus it's not, each of those aren't year-to-date numbers. So
yeah,
that's
those-
all I'm trying to understand.
yeah,
Thank you.
Yep, yep.
I have a question.
Okay.
So it kind of goes a little bit maybe as to what Bob Fry asked. As to institutions that are comparable to us and having investments, I guess more specifically, I look at the retirement plan and the general pool, and I see a large amount of investments in private markets, especially in the real estate debt, things like that. Is that standard for institutions that are trying to be conservative to have 26% to 28% invested in private debt? You just see so many disasters in private debt if you watch the markets. I know it's supposed to be high risk, high return. I don't see real high returns here, but this is a little bit out of my wheelhouse. But I'm just trying to understand why the rationale between having 26 to 28% in private investments.
Yeah, so what I'd say is in the retirement plan, the amount of private assets that we have is pretty consistent with peer pension plans. In the endowment space, it's actually lower than most peers. And Jeff, I don't know if you have any broader, you deal with a lot of clients in terms of what you see.
Yeah, I would agree with that statement. The primary role of private assets is to drive excess returns over what you can earn in the public markets. And in the case of private credit or private debt, those investments are mostly structured in variable rate instruments, meaning in a low interest rate environment, which we were in several years ago, it was a way for us to not only earn a good premium in terms of a yield over what we could earn in the public markets, but also not get penalized if we experienced a rate rise like we have had over the last 18 months. And so those investments are not as risky as perhaps you may think. Certainly some of them do take some risk in them, but your private markets portfolio, both in your private credit, private equity, as well as your private real estate, have all done very well.
Can you talk about the interaction between the board and the administration on risk tolerance, how we set that, how we get to that conversation? I think that might help bring everybody up to maybe a more similar place.
Sure. Well, and glad you asked that question, because what that's really talking about is the asset allocation process, asset liability studies. We've actually started, we've had a kickoff call this week. It's a long process where we start with the modeling, we look at the risk, particularly with the pension plan. And again, the pension plan, the nature of it has changed, so it has a different risk profile. So we start with that and say, what are the constraints from a risk management standpoint on how we want to manage that, how Ryan wants to incorporate that into the budget, the guardrails around that. And then we build a portfolio around that for the retirement plan that meets that risk profile. And so that exercise has started. The plan will be, we're going to be doing a lot of work this fall. There'll be engagement with board members. There'll be engagement with the Investment Advisory Committee, probably multiple times. And the goal would be for the June board meeting of next year To the extent we have any recommended changes after that very long deliberative process, we would come to the board next June with recommended changes. But everything is driven by risk.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I have one more question. And Tom, this is probably more for Jeff. Jeff, I believe you were pointing out that when rates are extremely low, there's some attractive qualities of private debt or private equity. But I think you said as rates rise, it's not negatively affected. I would think that as you have a substantial rise in interest rates, it greatly affects private debt and private equity. Can you kind of go over that a little bit with me?
Happy to. Obviously, when rates rise, it affects all asset classes. It certainly most directly affects bonds, but it also affects public equities. And it's also fair to say that it has effects on private companies, and both on the debt side and the private side. So the weaker companies in the private market portfolio may not be able to withstand higher interest rates as well as others. And so there is a chance for a recession and greater default rates. And that's the same as true in the public realm as it is in the private realm. What I was speaking to is the rate structure itself, in that the instruments within your private credit portfolio get reset to higher interest rates like a variable mortgage would. And so one of the big downfalls with fixed income securities that are not variable is that as rates rise, the value of the bonds have to depreciate in order to make them on par with market rates. In the private credit portfolio, that is generally not the case. But it is true that within the private markets portfolio, those corporations that are responsible for paying the coupon payments and earning the equity returns, they are subject to the same challenges of the environment that all investments are. And a higher rate environment is a new environment for all of us. It hasn't materially affected the markets up to this point in the case of what the stock market is doing and the expectations for the forward curve. But you know, and also in terms of where we are in terms of our economic growth. But we do expect some sort of dislocation starting sometime early next year.
Julia?
Thanks.
Yeah, I just had a,
This is Bob. Just one more question. You mentioned your debt or variable rates. How often are those rates reset? Are they weekly? Because I know a lot of bonds are set that way. Or are they spread out? How often is the variable rate reset? Or do you have any average?
So that's going to depend on really the individual vehicle. We're at several different private debt investments, and then within each of those, there's a wide range of investments underneath that. Quarterly, 6 months, typically. I would say that one of the highest performing investments over the last 2 years has been a private credit investment in the shipping industry, senior secured lending. So there are a lot of areas in that space that are still very interesting. And then we're also prepared to be investors when the market turns, and that creates more opportunities, but we're waiting on that.
Julia?
yeah, Tom, obviously we've worked closely together. It's been a while, but we have the utmost confidence in you and your team. But I was wondering if you could describe the role of the Investment Oversight Committee and who that's comprised of, that we get to do some of this work for free to help, because these are very important decisions, and obviously it's a very important nest egg for us to protect. But I was wondering if you could describe a little bit about what that committee is and how they support the board.
So in a nutshell, back in the financial crisis, 2008, 2009, President Forsey was in office, and he had reached out to a couple of alums that were in the investment management industry and informally got together a group because he wanted advice, because we remember what markets were doing at that time, a very challenging time for pension plans, et cetera, and he wanted advice from industry. And so he connected with some alums. And I guess what I'd say is that over the years and when President Wolf was in place, we built that into a formalized structure. And so now I think there are 6 or 7 alums that sit on that advisory committee. They all have expertise in investments or finance. And it's an opportunity where, like, if we're before the board or the finance committee, we might have 10 or 15 minutes to go into a topic. When we've had some meetings, we can spend 5 hours diving into topics. So it gives a chance to go much more in depth. And then aside from the COVID era, we'd always had 1 or 2 curators join those meetings so that board members can get sort of the direct interaction and be a part of that discussion and have confidence that lots of smart people around the table are asking tough questions. And more often than not, and Jeff can testify to this, we take the feedback in those meetings and we go back and we change and we tweak the plans and the proposals, and then we come back. And then after we get through that process with the investment advisory committee being satisfied, they'll actually make a recommendation, just advisory, to the full board that they sort of endorse the recommended changes. And that will be going on this fall, and we certainly would love to have curators participating in that as well.
Any other questions? Okay, if there are no other questions, thank you, Tom, for your time, and
thank you.
We'll move on. Executive Vice President Ryan Rapp will present the 2024 Strategic Dividend Distribution and will be available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Curator Graves. I think this topic follows on nicely from what Tom just presented. I did want to give, in addition to what was included in your materials, just some background. So the strategic dividend is derived from that general pool or working capital that Tom was referencing. This was created in 2020 when we restructured with the Council of Chancellors. Some of the general pool earnings had been used to fund system. That was all reallocated to the individual universities based on their share of our working capital. Really treats the system as a cost center, and they retain those. And then this dividend component was really for once we've paid that payment we were paying for system administration, we've paid we have internal holders of cash that we pay a kind of bank rate of interest to. If we have earnings over and above that and we have risk reserved appropriately for volatility, then it generates a dividend for the universities. And one of the things that came out of that is that the universities would each submit their plans to use those dividends to the board for approval. As we establish this, one of the things we want to really guarantee is that in any year we will provide a minimum of $15 million in the form of a dividend. Last year the dividend was $15 million. The year before, though, I think it was right around $55, $56 million. So there are years where it can be much higher. And I think as we get into that, I think Tom went over the returns for this year. I think we have the potential for the dividend in FY24 to be higher than the floor of $15 million. Again, it's split based on the university's share of our working capital. Mizzou, I think, has about 2/3 of that, with the other universities having roughly between 10 and 15%. As far as their uses, proposed use of the dividend, it's contained in your materials. For MU, it would go towards supporting Mizzou Forward and other strategic initiatives. S&T is using it to support capital for Schrank Hall. And keep in mind the dividend amount for MU, I think, is right at $10 million. S&T is around $2.1 million, so it'll go to support their capital project. And then UMKC is looking to use $2 million roughly to support critical M&R projects on the campus. And then UMSL will use it for the space consolidation and sponsorship as they continue to move things off of the South Campus onto the North Campus. But I did just want to, before I ask for any questions, make sure you had some context as to how the dividends derived, how we arrived at the amount, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Ryan? All right, there's no further discussion. May I have a motion, a second from the committee to approve the fiscal year 2024 for strategic dividend distribution for the University of Missouri is outlined in your materials.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those on the committee in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those
Aye.
opposed? Nay? Any abstentions? Okay, Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the Finance Committee, we move to recommend to the full board that the fiscal year 2024 strategic dividend distribution for the University of Missouri, as outlined in your materials for this meeting, be approved.
Thank you, Curator Graves. A motion has been made to approve the strategic dividend distribution for the fiscal year of 2024 as presented. Do I have a second from the board?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please vote aye.
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 Any opposed, please vote nay. Do we have any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes. Curator Graves.
Okay, and just real quick, circling back to our discussion of the investment strategy earlier, Bob, or Mr. Fry, if you would like to, I participated in that meeting last year, and it's very, they provide a lot of details, so we should probably get that date and get that on your calendar for this year.
Do we have a date?
We don't have a date, but when we will be getting dates out, I think probably either early next week.
Yeah, I would like to do that.
We will
Okay,
do that.
all right.
Yeah,
Let's move on to our final item. Executive Vice President Rapp will present the mid-year changes to the 5-year, capital plans and be available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Curator Graves. So I did just providing some orientation on capital planning. We've been doing this process now for probably a little over 5 years. We really have a rolling 5-year capital plan. We present that in April, and then this provides an opportunity for any updates that we might need. I think there's 2 key components to this. So if you see it and it's included in the 5-year finance plan, that means when we are bringing forward our financial plans in February for approval, that we've actually included this in that financial plan, and we feel comfortable that there's a reasonable plan of finance that could underwrite that project. If you see it on the strategic project plan, that really is telling the board, hey, we're looking at this project. We don't really have any idea how we're going to fund it, or we may not even know it, but really wanting to say it's an opportunity for the board to provide some input to say, well, before you go try to fundraise for this or you try to think about financing it, we're not even sure the project has any merit. So it's an opportunity. Just know that even with the project, with the capital plans being approved, we then still have to come back to the board for project approval. So this, even with the plan being authorized, it doesn't mean that the individual project is authorized to move forward. It has to come back, and in that we have to have a plan of finance included in that. And this applies to any new construction projects greater than $5 million and any renovation projects greater than $8 million. And then if we're going to issue any type of debt, it doesn't matter what size the project is. It would be included in this plan for the board's approval. I think one of the things we're seeing with these plans is we're experiencing these record amounts of capital that are coming in either from the federal government or the state government. And we still need to continue to improve upon our capital planning process. I think we have a good framework here, but one of the goals over the next year is how do we integrate that even more with our financial planning. So I think we've gotten better at it, but we're still not where we want to be. And why I say that is if you look at these plans, they tend to, the next year we tend to understand pretty well, but if you get out into years 3, 4, and 5, we're not where we need to be. And so I think we'll continue to work to improve upon that. I'll just briefly kind of highlight some of the changes. In your documents, we try to highlight in red everything that's changed, so you're not having to say, okay, do I have to read all of this? But if you want to know what's changed, it'll be highlighted in red. We've modified the plans at MU relative to some of these projects, not large changes. I would note the additions with the state funding we received for the VMDL lab, the Veterinary Medical Laboratory, that has been included. And then for ag, we've got the meat processing facility. So those are both state-funded projects that we received an appropriation for this year, and then we've got some infrastructure that we're hoping to incorporate in terms of our thermal plant and chilled water production. And those are all included in our finance plan. The strategic project plans that aren't included, I think contemplating looking at what a fourth floor fit out of the Innovation Tower at Next Gen would look like. So it's not, the fourth floor fit out of Next Gen is already under construction. This would be the Innovation Tower. Looking at expanding additional capacity for MER and what that might look like. And then also a phase 2 of Memorial Union in terms of its improvements of the exterior of the building. For MU Healthcare, there were no changes to the capital plan. UMKC really just modified the financing sources for the steam heating plant renewal project that was included on the consent agenda this morning. S&T has made some changes in terms of funding sources, and really this has been impacted by the state funding that we've received, and then additionally they've got a partnership research facility they're contemplating as part of their strategic project plan. And then for OMSL, there were no changes to their plan. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions about the capital planning process, funding, or any of the projects that were included.
I have a couple of questions. One comment I'd like to make is we're very appreciative of the legislature and to the governor for the vet med and meat science appropriations that were provided for, even beyond what we'd asked for. And one of the comments, and I guess it's sort of a question, is we continue to hear a lot about the new engineering initiative at the University of Missouri. I think it's probably time for us to get a little more in depth on that, so that the board understands it and we can understand what the thoughts are there.
I think for the November meeting, we can plan to have as an information item a very in-depth discussion around what the programming for that building will look like, what the needs are, and I think we'd be in a position to do that given the work we've been doing with the architects and engineers on the building.
Okay, and following on those two, our success recently of receiving large appropriations from the state and the federal government, and also on the fact that we may be entering into this engineering initiative. I think that those days of those large fundings are behind us, at least for the foreseeable future. How is our fundraising matching up to what we need?
So, I think we talk about fundraising in this document. One of the things, typically when we bring projects forward to the board for approval, we either want to have the cash in hand or we want to have signed pledges. So I think, at that point, when that's coming forward, if we said we were going to have $40 million for this project and we've only got $20 million in signed pledges, we'd have to reconcile that at that point. Additionally, more broadly speaking, how we're doing in terms of fundraising for capital and other things, at the November meeting, we will be having the advancement offices present performance results for the last year. And I think that has fallen under the Finance Committee, and I think we'll have a pretty robust discussion around just overall fundraising performance at all 4 of our universities. And we'll get into how we're doing in terms of capital fundraising relative to our annual funds and some of the other types of giving.
And one of the things I'd like is sort of a report card, just not overall numbers, but we built this project, here's what we said the fundraising component would be.
Okay.
And to date, here's where we are, so
Okay.
that we know if we're asked to embark on another large project, that there's going to be a fundraising component, we know that we're going to be able to meet that commitment.
We can make sure we include that in the November report and something we can discuss at that meeting.
Okay.
Can we also add to that, I think it was at the April meeting, you mentioned that generally it's 10% benchmark for budget. Do I have that right for philanthropy? Did you say, I was thinking we said that at S&T. And I'll go find the slide. But,
okay.
But if we could talk about, maybe what we should be expecting, what standard for our size of system to peers.
We can
so
make
sure.
sure.
So we can kind of track that, certainly by project, but also holistically.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
We can
Thank
do
you.
that.
Okay, other questions from the board or the committee? All right, if there's no further discussion, I have a motion, a second from the committee to approve the fiscal 2024 mid-year changes to the 5-year capital plans as outlined in your materials.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor on the committee signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? All right, Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the Finance Committee, we move to recommend to the full board that the fiscal year 2024 mid-year changes to the 5-year capital plans as outlined in the materials of this meeting be approved.
Thank you, Curator Graves. A motion has been made to approve the fiscal year 2024 mid-year modifications to the 5-year capital plans as presented. Do I have a second?
I will second that and also add my little plug that I'm excited to see the expansion for the veterinary medical building, because I've spent a fair amount of time there with my dogs recently, and you have some very excellent doctors there who are punching well above their weight. So I'm excited. That's my emphatic second.
So we have a motion and an emphatic second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Not about barking.
Any abstentions? Motion passes.
All right, Mr. Chairman, this emphatically concludes the business.
Next, we will have the Audit and Compliance Committee. And today, the Audit and Compliance Committee has one information item. Chief Audit and Compliance Officer Michelle Peranio will present our only item today, the Audit, Compliance, and Ethics Quarterly Report. Ms. Peranio will review the activity for the past quarter. After the presentation, Ms. Peranio will be available for any questions the committee may have.
Thank you, Chair Williams. So currently on our rolling audit plan, we have 30 audits and consulting engagements. 8 audits are in process, and 22 audits and consulting projects have not started. We've also completed 6 investigations since the last meeting, and we are actively working 4 investigations. So we conducted follow-up procedures, and we do this twice a year to verify the status of the management actions for previously issued audits. And for this period, there were 2 action items were due in 2 audits. I think I have 7 on this slide. It's 2 audits. And one of the 2 action items were completed, and 1 management action item associated with the UMKC lab safety audit was extended. The extension was necessary due to personnel on leave, resulting in a shortage of staff to complete this action item. And so I want to provide a little more context and thinking around how we evaluate, is this a valid reason? This audit had 5 action plans, and 3 have been completed, and 1 is not due. The leader over this area has addressed implementing a web application that facilitates researchers providing updated information about changes to the lab spaces, including location, any hazardous materials in the lab spaces, and who are the workers. This was foundational for being able to understand how to manage the risk and which are the highest risk labs and for training of the workers. They also developed a lab closeout procedure, so there is now an official procedure about how I'm closing out my lab and what do I do. And they've implemented a requirement for general lab safety and training. So we felt that extending this management action plan due to the circumstances of personnel being on leave was appropriate, especially based on the fact that this person is moving quickly to get all of these foundational elements in place. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the committee for Ms. Peranio? And Michelle, I do have one question. I want to make sure that, do you feel that that management is appropriately focused on the implementation of these plans?
Yes, because if they're not, we escalate it to above them, and then usually that gets results. So as we go through our follow-up procedures, if it's too long a period before things are moving, we will escalate it.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Peranio.
Thank you.
Curator Holloway, I will turn it over to you for the Governance, Compensation, and Human Resources Committee meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Governance, Compensation, and Human Resources Committee has one action item today. Our action item is to approve the amendments to CRR 200.010 and 600.020 for allegations occurring both on or after August 14th, 2020, and prior to August 14th, 2020. I'll now ask General Counsel Mangini to present the proposed amendments.
Thank you, Curator Holloway. This is a relatively minor change to those three CRRs, and it's in response to a recent Supreme Court ruling in the Counterman v. Colorado case. Basically, as a result of that Supreme Court ruling, there is now required a recklessness test to be added to conduct rules that define stalking and threats. So in addition to engaging in conduct that a reasonable person would find threatening, the accused also had to realize that they were being threatening, or at least recklessly disregard that they were being threatening in their actions. So we have updated each of those three CRRs to reflect that new standard. It is in red line fashion and in clean fashion in the board materials. Any questions?
Seeing no questions by the committee, I would like to ask for a motion and a second from the committee for the amendments that, as mentioned, CRR 200.010 and 600.020, the allegations occurring before or after August 14th and prior to August 14th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and the committee, I have a motion and a second. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the Governance Committee, I will submit this to approval for the full board.
Thank you, Curator Holloway. A motion has been made to approve the amendments to the two collected rules and regulations presented. Do I have a second from the board?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any opposed say nay. Are there any abstentions? Motion passes. Curator Holloway.
Mr. Chairman, we're done with this. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
That concludes the business of the committee. Our one action item has been acted on.
Thank you, Curator Holloway. I will now turn it over to Curator Winokur for the Health Affairs Committee Chair Report.
I don't know that I'm going to be able to inject humor into this, but we'll go with it. Good morning. The Health Affairs Committee met on August 29th. We had 4 information items and 2 action items. As previously noted, we added a report at each meeting of the Health Affairs Committee from each university in the University of Missouri system regarding academic medicine and the medical research being conducted on their campus. Last week, we heard from UMKC Chancellor Agrawal. He gave us an insightful presentation on the Health Science District development and future impact, and we were so appreciative that we were able to have our Health Affairs Committee here at UMKC last week. I'm now going to turn it over to Executive Vice Chancellor Dr. Rick Barron, who will present a summary of the presentation for us this morning.
Thank you, Curator Winokur, and thank you, Chair Williams and members of the board. Today, I would like to provide an update from the School of Medicine and MU Healthcare, and also an update on MU Healthcare financials. So first, the School of Medicine. So I have some good news to highlight our School of Medicine research expenditures. In 2023, we ended the year with more than $90 million of research expenditures. In 2020, President Choi challenged our team in the School of Medicine to double research expenditures in 5 years, and I'm pleased to tell you we're on track to do that. We definitely should exceed $100 million in research expenditures in fiscal 2024, and I am anxious to see by how far we exceed that mark based on all of our Mizzou Forward hires. In addition to hiring into Mizzou Forward, there are existing faculty that are very responsible for our research success. And so our research success is all based on talent of our researchers, our faculty. So I want to point out a couple recent examples of research activity from our talented faculty. Dr. Myrna Basevic, whose photo you see on the top right, she recently published an article in the Journal of Cancer Education that found that the vast majority of cancer survivors rely on their primary care physicians for follow-up treatments, and this is especially in rural areas. According to her research, 96% of cancer survivors reported meeting with their primary care doc versus 60% of patients who saw an oncologist. These rural primary care physicians reported relying on the training that they received in their residency programs, family medicine and internal medicine residency, and on the patient's own oncology notes in their personal accounts of treatment for keeping up on cancer. The study identified several ways to overcome these barriers, such as equipping primary care doctors with the tools that they need to use technology such as telehealth in order to expand the reach into rural physicians. So I also want to highlight Dr. Laura Schultz. President Choi actually briefly mentioned her in his comments as well, but to expand a little bit on Dr. Laura Schultz's recent NIH grant from the National Institute of Child Health and Human Services, which is over $3 million. And as Dr. Choi mentioned, she is studying preeclampsia. Preeclampsia is the leading cause of maternal mortality worldwide. And so she's studying a particular type of cell in the placenta called the trophoblast cells, and these cells provide nutrients to the growing embryo. And she's trying to understand how dysfunction of these trophoblast cells will cause placental defects and preeclampsia. So we're very excited about the work that she's beginning, along with some other new leadership roles that we've given her in the School of Medicine. So next I want to highlight our medical school class of 2027. We welcomed 128 new medical students in July. On the top right, you see these students in Jesse Hall, just moments after they received their white coats at the annual white coat ceremony. We were very pleased that Curator Winokur was able to join us for this occasion, and which is always attended at these occasions, family, friends, and it's a very moving experience. Below that, you'll see the students receiving the Oath of Geneva at the white coat ceremony. And this is a tradition that's a bit unique for Mizzou. As you know, when the physicians graduate from medical school, they take the oath, and we think it's important that they also take the oath at the beginning of their medical journey so that it really impresses on them what they are getting into and how important it is for them to be a physician servant. And then they will take it again when they graduate. In the lower right, you can see me handing a stethoscope to one of our incoming medical students. So this was at the annual stethoscope breakfast, which occurs 2 days before the white coat ceremony. This is another unique rite of passage we do at Mizzou School of Medicine that is not done at many medical schools. And our generous alumni provide these really nice stethoscopes for our incoming medical students that they can take with them as they enter the clinics. What I tell the students is that the white coat ceremony really is a symbolism of the compassion and empathy that they need to have as a physician. And the stethoscope is one of many tools that they will be working with throughout their careers as a physician that highlights the technical proficiency that they need to have. And so it's really both the combination of compassion and technical proficiency that are essential to be an effective physician. For my final update on the School of Medicine, I'd like to highlight a recent visit we had from Miss Missouri, Haley Leach, at the Thompson Center for Autism and Neurodevelopment. Haley's a second-year law student at WashU Law School, and her community service is entitled See the Able, Not the Label. And it focuses on autism awareness and acceptance. Her brother has autism, and she's been inspired to support siblings and other family members with information and support services. Ms. Leach plans to attend the Thompson Center's conference in September, which we have annually to talk about research and care for autistic patients and in support of their families. And she is going to host a sibling panel discussion at that event. So once again, thank you, Curator Winokur, for helping us to facilitate this visit. So let me transition to providing some MU healthcare updates. The first is about Cap Region Medical Center, and the integration of Cap Region Medical Center into MU healthcare is well on its way. Our integration activities are led by our new CEO, Rick Ransom, and COO, Katrina Lambrecht. Our leadership is now fully integrated into Cap Region Medical Center and is in charge of operations of that hospital. They are present, one of our leadership team is always present daily in Jefferson City. We have frequent forums where discussions are held with physicians and staff to answer questions about the integration. We are really laser focused to increase our clinical volumes at Cap Region Medical Center and to leverage the resources that both organizations, both hospitals, now one healthcare system, have to improve the financial performance of Cap Region. I had dinner the other night in Jeff City with two of the physician leaders, Dr. Haight and Dr. Barg, and they're all on board. It's really exciting. We've had really good open discussions with other stakeholders in Jeff City, such as the bishop who oversees Mercy Hospital and the Jefferson City Medical Group, which is the largest freestanding medical group in Jeff City, and those discussions continue so we can work collaboratively with those stakeholders in the region.
Before you leave that slide,
Yes.
I just want to compliment your team. This has been an amazing effort. It's the rollout, it's the detail, it's the constant communication. You just hear it, and I live in mid-Missouri, and I hear people talking about how excited they are about this, and the people who work at Cap Region about how appreciative they are about how MU Healthcare has met them, talked to them, and made them feel quickly a part of their team.
Thank you, Curator Winokur. I also, in my position, only hear positive things about how it's rolling out. Thank you. So moving on to Children's Hospital. It's really exciting to see Children's Hospital nearing its completion. It's getting a lot of media attention, and rightfully so. Here is a picture of a story that was done on KOMU about the opening of the facility, and they really did a great story about the new hospital that we're all very proud of. I wanted to let you please mark your calendars for some very exciting opening events. We'll have grand opening days in May, as you can see on this slide, and these opening days in May will be here before you know it. So it'll be very exciting to open the doors of this new facility. And hospitals have to get accreditation. It's an annual routine event. You never know when they're going to show up. They sort of give you a bit of a hint, but our accreditation body, known as the DMV, told us they would be showing up sometime in September, and instead they came in August. But we were ready for the visit, and it was a 3-day visit, and our hospital leaders, physicians, and staff impressed the surveyors. The accreditation team gave us full accreditation for another year, and they also recommended us for full certification into the International Organization of Standardization. This is really a significant accomplishment, and it amplifies the outstanding caliber of our healthcare system. And then finally, I'm going to give MU Healthcare financial update. And the end of FY23 financial picture for MU Healthcare is shown on this slide. This will be my only slide that I'm showing. May and June ended at a positive 13.2 million. That's in column 2. And that brings our preliminary FY23 total to 51.1 million. That's in column 3. The final accounting and entries and year-end audits may shift this number slightly, but we're basically at 50 million positive for FY23. So that operating margin is 23 million higher than it was in FY22. So it's very good news. Now, all healthcare systems around the country are going through the effort to return margins to pre-pandemic levels, and we believe that MU Healthcare is moving faster than most, with many healthcare systems still struggling to have a positive bottom line, particularly healthcare systems that are smaller than ours in rural areas, as we see here in Missouri. We believe that the FY23 results position us well to reach our targets for FY24, and that will help assure funding for the new children's tower and continued investment in all of our missions, clinical, education, and research at MU in Columbia, Missouri. So that's the report that I have from the Health Affairs Committee. Thank you, Curator Winokur, and thank you, Chair Williams, and I'm open for any questions.
Any questions? Okay. Thank you,
Well,
Dr.
thank you
Barrett.
very much.
The only action of the Health Affairs Committee was to approve the minutes of the June 22nd meeting, which were unanimously approved by the committee last Thursday. If there are no further questions, this concludes the business of the Health Affairs Committee, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Curator Winokur. At this time, we are scheduled to take a very brief break. And knowing that probably 90% of the people in this crowd are either trying to get to the Chiefs game or going to go watch the Chiefs game, I want to limit this to 10 minutes. So please be back in your seats at 10:11. But before the curators all take off, can you all huddle up for a second so I can tell you about a change in the schedule? Sure. Welcome back to the Board of Curators meeting. Curator Lehman, I will now turn it over to you for the Academic, Student Affairs, Research, and Economic Development Committee meeting.
Thank you, Chair Williams. Today, the committee has one information item, the UMKC Intercollegiate Athletic Report, and 3 action items, including a name and opportunity at the University of Missouri-Columbia, a new degree program proposal at Missouri S&T, and a resolution for executive session. We'll begin with the athletic report. These annual reports are required by the collective rules and regulations and provide board members with a high-level overview of the university's athletic programs. Additionally, we invite each athletic director to provide an overview of their programs when the board meets on their respective campuses. UMKC Athletic Director Dr. Brandon Martin has joined us this morning to walk us through UMKC's athletic highlights and answer any questions. Dr. Martin, please begin.
Thank you, Jeff, and welcome the Board of Curators here today. I'm delighted to be here to provide a brief report and summary of our accomplishments this past year and some of the things that are forthcoming. I just want to give some special kudos to my Chancellor Agarwal, for his continuous support in athletics, and it's important that all of the goals and objectives that we have in athletics align with what he wants to do with this university in terms of the mission and goals. So there's certainly alignment, and I just want to thank my Chancellor for that. So thank you. Thank you. Let's see if I can. Okay, so just want to start here with just, some general information about our athletics department. We sponsor 14 sports. We just reinstated men's and women's indoor and outdoor track and field. And that was a reinstatement from COVID, where that particular sport was suspended. In terms of our student athletes, a number, we have 221 overall, and you can see we have 95 men and 126 women within our department at this time. I'm proud to talk about one of the hallmarks of our department. Our overall GPA, 3.34. You can see the women's and men's GPA. Our GSR, our 95% graduation success rate, is within the 5% of all Division I schools. And so I think that's noteworthy. I think that's a credit to our academic support team. That's a credit to Ursula Gurney, who serves as my deputy AD, but also serves as our director of academic support during this time. And so we're extremely proud of our student athletes. We understand that most of our student athletes are going to be champions in areas outside of the sport. And so this is really a testament and a kudos to our coaches who have gone out and recruited student athletes who are the right academic fit for our university. Just a few financial highlights for FY23. We had a positive change in net assets of $452,000. That's just been a credit to the increase in sponsorships. That's been a credit to the increase in fundraising of why we had that surplus at the end of the year. Our expenses, as you can see, hover around $15 million, and that's just, most of that is travel cost with the inflation of that, but also providing meals for our student athletes, and also some additional support staff that we needed in select sports. And so you see that we've reached our revenue goals with sponsorship, but also gifts. And I just want to make a point to say that when I started here in 2018, we had 105 donors, and now we're up to 110 donors who have supported to our RU Athletic Fund. So I think that's not only a credit to myself, but it's a credit to our external relations team, but it's also a credit to our entire department. One of the charges that I have for my entire department is that everyone is a fundraiser. Everyone is responsible for selling tickets. Everyone is responsible for engagement. And so that's a true pride point for my department. Some of the athletic highlights, our men's golf team, we won our conference championship. And we did hire 2 new coaches in Coach Menzies in men's basketball, Deanna Durrett Jackson in women's basketball, and Ryan Poor actually was, the coach of the year last season, and just was awarded a contract extension. Ryan just had a big win against Drake this past weekend. We're excited about basketball. Coach Menzies has recruited 8 new players. Shooting was, one of the things that we needed this season. We do have some real signature games this year. One is KU. We're hoping that some of you here on the board can join us for that. We also play Baylor, and we play Colorado State. And we believe Colorado State is a winnable game. So we try to keep our guaranteed games at a minimal, and I believe that's the right formula for this season. Coach Jackson has recruited 12 new players this season, and I truly believe that those 12 players fit her identity, and I believe that we're going to see just a great product on the floor. Coach Jackson last season in the Summit League tournament, she had 6 or 7 eligible players. You know, some were injured, some, you know, had COVID, some had sicknesses, but we really came down to the wire, all the way down to the championship game in the Summit League. So I think that was a credit to her, her ability as a coach to deal with, you know, the players that she had. And so I'm really optimistic about women's basketball moving forward. I'm also optimistic about men's soccer. Our men's soccer team, you know, placed second last season in the Summit League, and hoping that we can compete with the likes of Denver and Oral Roberts moving forward. You know, some of the elevation, and some of you know that I like to dream, and I like to push a little bit. So elevation, you know, we have explored a new facility that's in the infant stages, and there's a lot that we need to work through because it has to make sense for our university. Chancellor Agarwal has to have a comfort level of, you know, where we're going with that facility. And so we're still working through that process, and it's in the RFP stage right now. Given the landscape of athletics, we believe that we need a strategic plan moving forward. I mean, you know, if you think about when I was hired in December of 2018, college athletics is different. It's different. So transfer portal, NIL, you know, the number of different things that we talk about as athletic directors, it's important that we know where we are going. Not so much 5 years from now, but even in the next 3 years. And so we're embarking on that process moving forward. Enhancements in the Sweeney Center. We just recently got a major gift from the Buckbinder family, which that's naming rights for our men's basketball locker room. But it's critically important that as we have that exploration for our new facility, that we continue to make significant upgrades in the Sweeney Center with the locker room, with our sports medicine unit, with our fueling station, and with our strength and conditioning area. That's critically important for us to move forward. And then lastly, our focus on comprehensive excellence. Our mantra for this year is everything counts. Everything counts. The way that we approach every project, the way that our student athletes communicate with professors, the way that my staff plans, everything counts. And so we've rallied around that mantra, and we're excited about what's henceforth. And so with that, I open it up for questions.
Thank you, Brandon. I've got one real quick, if you don't mind.
Yep.
You mentioned when you got here, you absolutely executed a move from our previous conference. I know the travel costs were exorbitant in that scenario. Could you speak to that a little bit, how that's gone?
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate that question. You know, we were in the WAC conference, and when you think about the WAC conference, when we made the change, and this was pre-COVID, there was no reason why we should have to travel our student athletes to Seattle, back down to Bakersfield, back down to Arizona, all the way back up to Chicago. So when you think about really being fiscally responsible and also student athlete welfare, it didn't make sense for us to stay in that league for a number of other reasons, but also the league really wasn't on a financial trajectory to reward you know, each athletic department and institution. So along with myself and Chancellor Agarwal, we made a decision that it was in our best interest to transition to the Summit League. Geographically, it made sense. We would save a ton of money on travel costs. Our student athletes can recover after contests. And also, you know, the institutions in the Summit League have been a better academic fit for us. And so it's just been a delight, you know, the last couple of years that we've been in the league to make that transition.
Any questions for Brandon?
I don't have a question. I just want to make one quick comment. I want to commend you, commend the Chancellor, commend your trustees, because I have had the pleasure of being in Kansas City and watching how you have elevated that program, taking over the plaza to let people know UMKC is Kansas City's team. You know, making sure your branding is everywhere, putting the new scary Roo out there and redoing the court. I mean, I have seen you go year by year, just elevate. That thing is scary. Look at it. It's not a friendly Roo. If you're coming here, you're coming to fight.
It's fierce, not scary.
But you guys have elevated this program and made it something that people in Kansas City can be proud of. And I know that step by step, year by year, you guys have built, and you've had, you know, Gary Forsey and others from the Board of Trustees behind you. And I have no doubt that as you take on this new endeavor and this new plan, you guys will do a fantastic job of collaborating, working together, and make sure that we take advantage of the streetcar and the trustees and the knowledge and everything else in Kansas City can provide you. And so I have nothing but the utmost confidence in this team, and I want to thank you for all you guys are doing.
Mr. Chairman, I really appreciate those sentiments. And, you know, I just, maybe in closing, if we don't have any more questions, I truly believe that we are sitting on acres of diamonds here, here in Kansas City, but here at this university, with the alumni presence here, with the interest in us being the only Division I college team here, that we've only hit the cusp. You know, we've done a lot, but there is so much more that we have to do. And so each day, I make it a goal of myself is to bring one person in, you know, to the fold. And it's not so much about them being a financial contributor, but it's just about getting them engaged. You know, we have the best value in town in terms of college athletics, because, you know, there's some folks might drive 40, 45 minutes away and they have a different experience, but they don't get back until 1 o'clock in the morning. And so when you come here, you know, we have a ton of opportunities, not only for the alumni, but for their children. And so this year we have a goal of really trying to fortify that engagement, and continue our value proposition here in Kansas City and also on campus as we elevate UMKC athletics.
Any other questions? Brandon, thank you very much.
Okay.
We appreciate it.
All
you're doing.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, our first action item is a request for approval of the naming opportunity for the Institute of Fisheries, Wetlands, and Aquatic Systems at the University of Missouri-Columbia. Vice Chancellor and Dean of the College of Agriculture, Food, and Natural Resources, Dr. Chris Daubert, is here to discuss the proposal and answer any questions. You may begin.
Good morning, curators, and thank you for this opportunity. Today, the University of Missouri is proud to be the home of the new Institute of Fisheries, Wetlands, and Aquatic Systems. The Institute will serve as a center of best practices and innovations that will protect and impact our environment. At the Institute, our faculty will train the next generation of environmental scientists, keeping Missouri's watersheds healthy and sustainable. With our ideal location in a state that boasts 2 major river systems, the Institute will attract top-tier faculty, staff, and students. The Institute was born from a unique partnership with CAFNR, the Missouri Department of Conservation, MDC, and the Missouri Conservation Heritage Foundation. I'd like to acknowledge our partners and to thank their leaders, Director Sarah Parker Pauley of MDC, and the Executive Director of the Foundation, Ms. Tricia Burkhart. Our partners at the Foundation have pledged $30 million in an endowment to support the Institute. And Mr. Johnny Morris is among those who have pledged at a leadership gift. Mr. Morris is the founder of Bass Pro Shops, North America's premier outdoor and conservation company. He is internationally recognized for his commitment to natural resources and stewardship. In appreciation of his achievements in conservation, I recommend the naming of the Institute as the Johnny Morris Institute of Fisheries, Wetlands, and Aquatic Systems. Thank you for considering this request. I am happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Chris. Do we have any questions? Okay, if there's no further discussion, may I have a motion and a second from the committee to recommend approval of the request that the University of Missouri Institute of Fisheries, Wetlands, and Aquatic Systems within the College of Agriculture, Food, and Natural Resources be named the Johnny Morris Institute of Fisheries, Wetlands, and Aquatic Systems as presented above.
Recommended.
Can I get a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay. Are there any abstentions? The motion carries. Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the Academic Student Affairs, Research, and Economic Development Committee, I move to recommend to the full board that the University of Missouri Institute of Fisheries, Wetlands, and Aquatic Systems be named the Johnny Morris Institute of Fisheries, Wetlands, and Aquatic Systems as presented.
Thank you, Curator Lehman. A motion has been made to approve the naming opportunity for MU. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please vote aye.
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 Any opposed,
Aye.
please vote nay. Are there any abstentions?
Mr. Chairman, due to my involvement with the Missouri Conservation Heritage Foundation, I need to abstain from this vote.
Thank you, Curator Fry. Cindy, please note for the record that Curator Fry has abstained from this vote. And the motion passes. Curator Lehman.
Hey, Jeff, before you jump in, I just
Thank
want to
you.
say, let me say one
Yep.
thing. Water is such a key part in between the journalism, the new opportunities with the Journalism Fund looking at water, or the journalism emphasis with the Walmart Foundation and what you're doing. I'm so excited for our state to own that as a resource in major ways. I think the East Coast has always done a great job at that with their universities. I'm excited for the University of Missouri to be a part of that.
If I may, one of the other great things of this Aquatics Institute, which is originally called, is the development of new educated people to take the place of these retiring managers of our most precious assets, wildlife, wetlands, and so forth. And that is such a needed commodity that we have a new generation of people educated to take over the leadership role with the Missouri Department of Conservation. Would you care to comment on that?
I couldn't agree more with you. There are lots of opportunities in this space, and I'm thrilled that the University of Missouri will be able to contribute to that talent pipeline.
Nothing further. Curator Lehman.
Thank you.
Okay. Our second action item is a proposal for a Bachelor of Science in Biomedical Engineering to be offered at the University of Missouri, or Missouri University of Science and Technology. Dr. Borick, Dean of College of Engineering and Computing, and Dr. Yang, Department Chair and Professor of Chemical and Biomedical Engineering, have joined us via Zoom to provide a brief presentation and answer any questions. You may begin.
Hi there, I'm David Borak. I'm pleased to be here, and thank you to the members of the Board of Curators for hearing this proposal. So I'm here to talk about our Bachelor's of Science degree in Biomedical Engineering. This is, again, an undergraduate degree that will be delivered in person on our campus in Rolla, Missouri, and it will be hosted by the Department of Chemical and Biochemical Engineering. Actually has two tracks, I should add. One is in biomaterials, the other is in biomanufacturing. Both of those play to some of our strengths that exist already within our College of Engineering. And we're really motivated and excited to do this now because there's such a high demand for skilled professionals in this area. In fact, the labor force market in this area, I think, is about 10% growth projected over the next decade nationally for folks in biomedical engineering and related areas. And it's actually greater in Missouri. It's about 18%. So that's a really good start, that job demand. And then that intersects really well with the demand that we're seeing on our campus from students as well. So we actually have a couple of peripheral areas that students go into now because we don't have this degree program. One of those is an emphasis area in biochemistry that's offered by our chemical engineering department. That has had strong growth over the last decade or so. And then we also have a minor in biomedical engineering that's offered from our materials science and engineering department. And that's also seen very strong growth. And there's a big demand for biomedical engineering from the students that are, I guess, being admitted, but we're not able to provide that at this time. So in addition to that, I think it also sort of strikes a chord with our strategic plan and where we're going as a university. One of the things that we're embarking on right now is a strategy that we call our BioX vision, where the X stands for our educational and research initiatives that we want to sort of grow and coalesce. And by doing that, I think we're going to be able to better connect to the ongoing efforts in these sorts of areas within the state and other system schools. And then we're also hoping that we can provide some really top quality engineering students that will be interested in the existing professional degrees that we have in Missouri and within the system as well. So we think that's a win-win. We think that the biomedical engineering program is going to be a big part of all of that. So thank you for your time and considering this proposal. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee or board?
I have one, Jeff, to David. What percent of your graduates and in this new degree do you expect will stay within the state of Missouri?
It's a tough call, and I'll also ask Dr. Yang if he has a better feel than perhaps I do, since he's going to be leading the program itself. But I think we'd have to just rely on information that we have from our other majors. And I'd say, I don't have exact numbers for you, but the percentages are very high of the folks who stay in our state. I would say it's upwards of 50%, probably, is what I'd estimate.
Did Dr. Yang want to say something?
Yes, certainly. My assessments agree with Dr. Borak's, and so we have a very strong industrial connection within the state of Missouri, based in St. Louis area. Traditionally, we have a lot of alumni working in that area, so we see also a lot of employer support from that area, and so that we see certainly there's a great percentage retention in the state.
Yeah, it's a very good point, and a lot of the the support letters from industry were in St. Louis area, for example.
I mean, I just think that it's a great program you're talking about. I just like to see efforts in especially specialty areas that produce tremendous jobs and a tremendous workforce, especially in the metropolitan areas, as you're pointing out. I just like any efforts that you can think of to go along with these great programs to motivate your students to stay within the workforce here anywhere in Missouri. So that's my only comment.
Yeah, agreed. And we've been having a lot of discussions with the other system schools about funneling folks into professional degrees in those areas too. So we're hoping to have more medical professionals, for example, within the state through this program.
Curator Blitz, I think Chancellor Dagani has something to add as well.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that from our Office of Placement and Recruitment, over 80% of our graduates stay in the state of Missouri, but that's at the university level. And that maps into the fact that 85% of our students are from the state of Missouri. So we're talking about numbers over 3/4 of the graduates that stay in the state of Missouri. And even those who leave the state of Missouri and are from the state of Missouri ultimately come back to the state of Missouri.
Do we have any more questions? I may have lost. Any more questions?
I have none.
No questions.
No questions, Curator Lehman.
Okay, I got you now. Okay, thank you very much for that presentation. If there's no further discussion, may I have a motion and a second from the committee to recommend approval of the Bachelor of Science in Biomedical Engineering at the Missouri University of Science and Technology as presented above?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed, nay. Are there any abstentions? The motion carries. Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the Academic Student Affairs, Research, and Economic Development Committee, I move to recommend to the full board that the Bachelor of Science in Biomedical Engineering at Missouri University of Science and Technology be presented as above.
Thank you, Curator Lehman. A motion has been made to approve the new degree program proposal for Missouri S&T as presented. Do we have a second?
Second.
Are there any other questions or further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please vote aye.
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 Aye. All opposed, please vote nay. Are there any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries. Curator Lehman.
Thank you. Our last action item this morning is for executive session of the committee. I would now entertain a motion and a second from the committee. Did I lose you?
Nope, you're
from the committee to hold a committee meeting in closed session this afternoon.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary, please call the roll of the committee.
Curator Blitz?
Yes.
Curator Graves?
Yes.
Curator Lehman?
Yes.
Curator Sinkfield?
Yes.
You have all votes in favor.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, that concludes the public session for the Academic Student Affairs, Research, and Economic Development Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Curator Lehman. We will now move to the general business of the board, and we will ask Chancellor Agrawal to provide us information and updates regarding the highlights from UMKC. So I will turn it over to you, Chancellor. Walk-up music.
morning. On behalf of all the faculty, staff, and students of EMKC, let me welcome all of you to our beautiful campus. We look forward to this day every year. There's a sense of excitement at UMKC, as you may have sensed from not just the video, but if you have been on campus for the past couple of days. And that's because there's a lot going on at UMKC that's going right. I'm going to give you a brief overview of some of the accomplishments of the past 5 years. Why 5 years is because we had a 10-year strategic plan that we embarked on in 2018. And this is the 5th year of that. And we are taking stock of what we have achieved and where we're going next. So this is a great time to give you just what we're finding out. What we're seeing is, and I'll talk about all of these things in a little bit more detail, is record growth in student success metrics, record growth in research and philanthropy, significant progress in adding more facilities according to our plans. We are building a strong brand reputation for UMKC, not just here, but elsewhere as well. But at the same time, we're continuing to invest in our faculty and staff. And of course, we are always, always, always proud of our student accomplishments. So just a very brief overview of some of the achievements. International students, we have perhaps some of the highest number of international students of any university in this area. Almost 15% of our student body at this time is international students. We have seen a 60% growth. Most of them are fueling our graduate programs. Undergraduate applications for fall 2022, compared to fall 2022, this year were up 11%. Overall, admissions were up 20%. That includes first time to college and transfer students. And over this past 5 years, we did get a full 10-year accreditation or re-accreditation from HLC. And then we also did some reorganizing for units, that includes the academic units. And we are seeing some of the highest 10-year highs for student retention and graduation. So talking about enrollment and retention, we have been embarking on some different types of admissions and marketing strategies to buck the trend. As you may be hearing, that nationally, student demographics are changing, the number of high school graduates is declining, and so the common wisdom is that our enrollments will decline, but we refuse to accept that. And so we have embarked on very strategic marketing and scholarshiping, and we are yielding double-digit growth at this point. Census date is not here yet. It will be another couple of weeks before we take stock finally, after the dust settles. But right now, UMKC is up 11.6% in first-time college students and about 13% in transfer students. And we are going to add, for next year, a very significant strategy, new strategy for graduate growth as well. We're also making great progress on retention and graduation rates. You see the retention rates have gone up over the past couple of years, and we anticipate that they will go up again this year when we take census. 6-year graduation rates, some of the highest that we have seen, they continue to rise. If you do a good job with some of the programs that we're talking about, signature programs, then that will happen on its own. So let's talk about some of those programs. First Gen Root program. This is one that I'm very, very happy about. This is first generation students. Almost 45% of our student body is first generation. We love our first generation Roos. And through this program, we bring them in a week earlier, teach them the ABCs of college, and then also do a little bit of extra hand-holding during the first semester. Just by doing that, our first generation Roos Scholars program outperform all first generation students in GPA. And in a couple of semesters, not just first generation college students, they outperformed all of UMKC undergraduates. That is amazing, just some of the efforts that we're making. And we're going to increase some of these programmings so that we go into the next semester as well, not just fall, but also spring, to see if we can use that to increase the retention rates. Another signature program that we embarked on a couple of years ago is the Professional Career Escalators. This program is geared toward focusing students on the careers, not just on the degree, because the degree is just one piece of their career. And so talking to students early on what they really want to do 5, 10, 15 years later, and then directing them in that direction. We have doubled the cohort this year. The 4 tracks that we're looking at this point in time, healthcare, education, business engineering together, and law and justice. And you can see the enrollments in those tracks because students choose what they want to be. Healthcare is number 1, followed by business engineering and education, law and justice. We are going to extend this program now to start talking to high school students while they're still in high school to put them on track so that they, when they come here, they'll go seamlessly into this professional career escalators. Now, we all know that we cannot achieve good results with student success unless we have great faculty and we invest in the faculty. CAFE, which is, I was talking to Chancellor Degani, is something we just borrowed from them, the name, Center for Advancing Faculty Excellence. This is a program that faculty run and teach other faculty how to be excellent, how to do more grant writing, how to do better grant writing, how to be better in classrooms. This has really taken off. The faculty are very, very enthusiastic about this, and it's really bearing really good results that at least we can see that on the research front where we can measure it in terms of grants. We just opened up in a physical area for them, the UMKC Faculty Commons in the Newcomb Hall, and this is space where they can socialize and also network, but also their training facilities and classrooms for all the lectures and seminars that they're holding. So very proud of the Excellence of Faculty show. Although UMKC is replete with examples of faculty having won Pulitzer Prizes, Guggenheim Fellows, Academy Fellows of different kinds, we continue to make progress. This year we have 3 Fulbright scholars. As you can see, Brian Boots, Ginny Blanton, and Yotam Haber, all in different areas. And most of them were traveling to Europe, or I think Haber was going to Israel. And then on the research side, this is just a sampling of the grants that we have got this past year. Dr. Wong in Science and Engineering, NIH R1 Award for looking at heart arrhythmias. Dr. Bani Yaqub, again Science and Engineering, for his work on mathematical and computational models. And you see these big funding agencies, NIH, NSF over there. And then Diane Burke for her work in humanities and social sciences, funded by NEH, looking at Kansas City and jazz. Others, we have Dr. Chen. Dr. Chen, if I could remind you, is a director of the Center on Data Science, which is DSAC, which is a joint center with Mizzou. He came in from the University, FIU, Florida International University. He has been here for just about a year, and I think he writes about 2 grant applications a week. He's really prolific, and he goes after the big grants. He doesn't write the small ones, and he's already hit one of them. He did transfer here with significant grant money anyways, but he's making great progress, and he's very inclusive. He is including faculty from all 4 campuses in his grant applications. Of course, Dr. Janet Berkeley Patton, who is doing wonderful work here in the city, in the metro area, through his Health Equity Institute. This has been funded very generously by Jackson County, although she's also getting very significant NIH grants at the same time. Funding from Jackson County came right before COVID, $5 million, and it was just the right timing because through the work of this institute, there were almost 13,000 COVID vaccines that were administered on the east side of Kansas City, vaccines which we all know most likely were not going to be taken if it were not for her work and those of her students. And that literally saved hundreds of lives. Jackson County has been very pleased with her work, and they just gave her another $5 million to continue the work. Dr. Zha, School of Pharmacy, received a $2 million grant to study neuroprotection in stroke. So you see just across the campus, across the spectrum, faculty are doing really well in terms of research. And it shows. If you look at the red script there, the yellow line, when we embarked on the strategic plan 5 years ago, we had said we will get to NSF heard research funding of $60 million in 10 years. This year, when the numbers finally come in, we are very confident that it will be $60 million at the end of 5 years. So this is one area that we're reassessing and saying where are we going next. And the next target will be $100 million or more in the next 5 years. So we are being ambitious, but we were ambitious to start with, and it worked. And why am I so optimistic about why we will be able to get there is look at the blue line. Blue line is total sponsored projects, research and sponsored projects. That is, if you would, new business booked for the future. So if the red line is the trailing indicator, the blue line is the leading indicator of where everything is going. And you can see where we started 5 years ago at 38.5 million. This year, we are at 147 million. So we're making tremendous progress, and those numbers will translate into expenditures over the next few years. And how do you get there? Well, you need to write grants. Dr. Choi always mentions this, and you can see the number of grant proposals that our faculty are writing are going up significantly. And not just that, the amount of money that they're asking for, the dollar amounts, is also going up very significantly. Now, based on the research growth that we have seen and some of my own experiences in the past at other places, I think UMKC is at a point where we can realistically plan to attain R1 research status. So that's the Carnegie R1, that's the highest level for research. Why do we want to go there? Well, there's prestige to that. With it comes, it becomes easier to hire excellent faculty. It becomes easier to recruit even better students. And then there are more collaborations you can have with institutions across the country. R1 institutions like to collaborate with R1 institutions. Given what we are seeing, this chart that you see is a chart that we got from Carnegie. And it shows in the green the institutions that are R2 and in blue institutions that are R1. We don't have the names for those. They do not give you the names of which dot is who, except they tell us who we are. And that you see right there in the yellow circle. As you can see, we're not toward the bottom, we're toward the top. And that is, even after, when we talk to them, some inconsistencies in data that they have on us. I'll give you an example. When we talked to them, they said, well, if you want to get to R1, you'll have to increase your STEM PhDs. We asked them, how many do you have for us? They said 0. Well, I shake a lot of hands on stage twice a year at graduation. We have a lot of PhDs in STEM areas. Here's what was going on. Most of our PhDs at UMKC are under one umbrella called iPhD, interdisciplinary PhD programs. We don't have as many standalone PhDs. Carnegie doesn't count that as a STEM PhD. So they had proctored 0 for us. And so we will be coming to the board through the provost to ask you for standalone PhDs in certain areas. We are already doing the work. We already have been producing these PhDs for decades, but they don't have the right zip code, and so they don't get counted. There's a lot of work like that we have to do to clean up, which will take our present state today much closer to that cusp, and then we are engaging with some consultants who have done this before at other R1 institutions to see how we flip ourselves across. I'm pretty confident that if we do these things right, in the next 5 to 7 years, we will be an R1 institution. We are doing much, much better on the financial side as well. We had negative operating margins, as I will show you, when we started in 2018. We have corrected that. We have increased the reserve funds by 60%. Ryan Rapp has been a great partner in assisting with all of that and guiding us. And we're also committing dollars every year for the past 2 years in investing in our faculty and staff to make sure that their salaries are more comparable to our peers. We also immersed in the city, and we have a very strong center that helps with business development, not just for businesses coming out of UMKC, but any business in the metro area, whether they are mom and pop little stores or the tech companies that are starting up. Between 21 and 22, we assisted 553 companies stand up here in the metro area. And we'll talk a little bit more about this, but we have been doing well in terms of fundraising. So very quickly, on the financial side, this is on the left side is a composite financial index, which is a composite of, I believe, 5 different metrics that are measured. As you can see in 2018, we were a little bit above 1. The green line shows where HLC, the accrediting agency, steps in and says, you're not really financially viable. And that could be a really bad thing to happen. We have got ourselves out of that. Financially stable is regarded at index of 3. We, as you can see, hit almost 7 in 2021. Part of that was some of the federal funding that came in during the COVID times, but we are now leveling off at around 5. As part of that index, there's different margins that we look at. Operating margin is one of them. As you can see, in 2018, we were operating at a negative 5.5, and we had been negative for a while. We did change that trajectory, and we're showing positive margins. What you see is projected in the future, and the reason we're projecting is that as per system, system, we should be at an operating margin of 1%. If we exceed that, that goes into the reserves. So we have to do a little bit of balancing. We have a lot of one-time needs in terms of infrastructure. Either we put everything into the reserves, or we also use some of that for cash flow and keep investing to increase the infrastructure. That's why you see the decline. It's not like we are projecting bad financial outcomes in the future, but it's the balancing between reserves and investments in our infrastructure. Cash to operations, again, you can see what the target is that is set for us, and that we're exceeding it now, and we want to continue exceeding it. Same thing with cash to debt. We're doing much better. So we're really happy about that. We're in a much better financial position than we were a few years ago. And then in terms of philanthropy, how do we encourage people to believe in where UMKC is going? And here in Kansas City, there's a buzz out there right now for UMKC. Those of you who live here in Kansas City most probably have heard it or are seeing it. And people are responding. Kansas City is one of the top most philanthropic cities in the nation per capita. And they invest here. And as you can see, this year, we had record success. Our previous high was about $61 million. That was, I think, the early part of the 2012 or so. We blew that out of the water by 94 this year, and we had done that more. We had broken that record by 6 months into the year. I do not think we can expect to see 94 on a steady basis just yet, but we will be looking to see how we launch into a campaign over the next few years, and that most probably will be in the average production of 75 to 80 a year. Now, we're investing in facilities as well. Let's get back here. All right. Some of you, thank you, came up to St. Joe last week, where we had groundbreaking on a UMKC building in St. Joseph for our medical school satellite there. As you know, 3 years ago, we launched a medical school satellite to train students exclusively, MD students exclusively for rural medicine. These students do not really come to Kansas City at all. They train exclusively up there in rural clinics in partnership with Mosaic Health. We were able to put together a financial stack to build our own building there. We have been borrowing space from Mosaic Health in the hospital till now. And $13 million of that came from federal appropriation, and very much thanks to former Senator Blunt. And about 1.5 came from the state of Missouri, and that was through some of the support from Representative Brenda Shields. We broke ground on this building. It should be ready by fall 2025. It's about a 20,000 square foot building, and our students and faculty will have their own space. Here in Kansas City, we would like to make Kansas City a regional draw for healthcare innovation and use that to become a magnet for best medical practitioners as well as best medical students. And as you know, we have that other campus here. This is the Volker campus. The health campus is about 3 miles away. That area now is known as the UMKC Health Sciences District. Some of you have been here for a while. may remember it as Hospital Hill. We want to create that as the center of medical excellence, health excellence. The first piece of that is going to be a new building that we are going to, that is sorely needed. And this new building, which will be the Healthcare Delivery and Innovation Building, will house all our teaching clinics for the dental school. Our dental school is the only public dental school in the state of Missouri. We also have agreements with Kansas because they do not have a public dental school. And we also supply Arkansas because they don't have one either. Curator Fry is a graduate of that school. Those facilities have got really outdated, and we want to make sure that when we train Missourians to be great dentists, we do that in state-of-the-art facilities, not facilities from 1967 is what we have right now. So all the teaching clinics will come out. We'll also do School of Medicine simulation labs. A lot of the training now is through simulation, very realistic simulation, as we saw yesterday in the curator orientation. We'll also have space for biomedical engineering, for Data Science Institute, as well as the Health Equity Institute. So how's the funding coming along? Well, thanks to the Missouri legislature, Governor Parson, and the work of many, many, we have 60 million now, 40 last year and 20 this year from Missouri, the ARPA funds. In response to that, Kansas City Therapy responded, $30 million gift from the Sunderland Foundation, $15 million gift from the Hall Family Foundation, and then $10 million, again, thanks to former Senator Blunt, from federal funding. We still have to do about $5 million. The building project is $120 million. We are very confident the other $5 million we'll be able to do from some other foundations as well as alumni. So this building is funded at this point in time. We don't have the final designs yet. They're doing schematic designs, but they tease me oftentimes with these pictures of what it may look like. Okay. And as you can see, it will be a tremendous addition to the Health Sciences District campus. Now, you see in the square there, this is an aerial view, if you would, of that campus. You see in the square, in the middle, the bottom, that's where that building will go. This is currently a surface parking lot. Right next to it on the left side is the U-shaped building that's pharmacy and nursing. And right north of that, the square is the medicine building. We are hoping that in concert with the partners, that is University Health, which is the county hospital, as well as Children's Mercy Hospital, which are all on this campus, that we can collectively make a master plan of what this campus could look like over the next 10, 20 years. And maybe as we start building each institution separately, we can try to use that as a guide. And this is what is happening right now with some master planners that we're collectively employing. And we're excited about what this could look like in the future. And we do want to create that this building will be the catalyst for creation of a large medical center, very much like those that the state of Texas has in different cities, that can drive not just medical care, but also the economy. Healthcare is a good tool for economic development. And there's a lot of people in this place, in our metro area, who need good jobs. We can meet the physician shortage. The underserved communities can be helped, can increase the research funding because we'll employ more people. And analysis has been done by Mark here that this could have almost a $2 billion increase in gross regional product. But again, this is something that will pan out slowly over the next 5, 10, 15 years as we identify our needs and gradually build and get faculty and staff in. We're not ignoring other areas at all. The conservatory has had sore needs for renovations for a long time. We invested our own funding. We renovated the Grant Recital Hall. It looks beautiful. If anyone wants to come for a recital, just let me know. We have replaced the dance studio flooring, which was falling apart, as well as changed out the practice rooms and rehearsal rooms for our music students. We'll continue to work on the conservatory with a new dean in place. He's working on some plans to see how we do some more renovations. But the old idea that was prevalent for a while of a brand new building over sometime downtown, somewhere downtown, is not something that we're working on at this point in time. That building, by the way, when it was planned, most probably, it's been 15 years since it was planned. At that point, it was supposed to cost $100 million. Our building now at the Health Sciences Center that we started on was supposed to cost us $100, and just a space of 24 months, prices have escalated, and that's why it's $120. The old conservatory plan most probably will be $200 million, which is not viable and not necessary for that program. But we're working on it so that the faculty and staff have the right facilities as we go forward. Sometimes it's not big buildings. Sometimes it's very small things, like Adirondack chairs in the quad, in the main quad. These chairs have been a huge hit with our students. You see them always occupied. They move them around the quad every single time, and now we're going to be adding some posts for hammocks and other things as well. So students are loving that. We have also completed repairs on the Spencer Chemistry Building. Some of you who were at the reception last night, that was on the Block Legacy Hall patio. As you saw, those gardens and patios, thanks to support from the Block Family Foundation, have been renovated. And then we're also working on classrooms across campus. One project that's getting a little bit of attention here in town, and we have done a request for proposals on this one, is our property that's on the west side of a campus between Brookside and Oak, next to Whole Foods. If you may remember, there used to be some residence halls there that were brought down after they failed due to some mold. And we're exploring what can be done with that property. On the top side, you see some construction there, and that's the streetcar construction. The streetcar is being extended from Union Station, and the southern terminus will now be UMKC. It will be the UMKC station. This will connect us all the way to up north to the river, and the river market there through downtown. Streetcar here in Kansas City is also free. So we do expect a lot of ridership and a lot of students using this to go up to events in downtown and further north. We do have needs for an arena for basketball, so we're exploring possibilities. If this was developed, could there be an arena as part of that? The RFP proposals are in. Our teams are evaluating them to see if there's anything viable there. I can guarantee you that if it does not make sense for UMKC, we're not doing it. It has to make sense for UMKC, and it has to be financially viable for us. And then we're also renovating student success facilities. Since we're making such good progress in student success, thanks to the work of the provost and her team in career services, in academic advising, we have made a lot of changes structurally to those, but we don't have the facilities for those yet. So we, at the top floor of the library, as well as Atterbury Student Success Center, there are projects underway where we're evaluating how we can renovate those to better serve our students. And then I said we are going to do a lot to work on a brand. You have to actually work on your brand. It doesn't happen on its own. And so we had engaged with a major firm, a national firm, that does work with a lot of national brands that you and I can recognize. That is based out of Kansas City, Barkley. And they have been working with us, and we have been working with them specifically to see how do you work with Gen Z generation, because that's the generation that we're trying to attract. And through a lot of work, we have decided on a rally cry. This is not the motto, this is not the tagline, this is a rallying cry for UMKC's never choose the norm. Because if you look at how we are set up, the kind of students we have, we are, I would say, already ahead of the curve, because that's where higher education is headed nationally, which is you do not usually have a majority of 18-year-olds. It's higher, more working people who are coming back. So I'll give you a few examples quickly here of some of the things that we're doing that you'll see in the marketing. For undergraduates, College Like You Mean It, a little more edgy type of marketing you see. For graduate programs, Master What's Next. These are just some examples of what you may see. And then if somebody could trigger this video for me, please. This is something that's already out there. Since we are in the middle of Kansas City, and we are immersed in Kansas City, and our students can actually use their companies and not-for-profits and others to learn. So.
Going to school in a university inside of a city there's just so much more opportunity and employment available than a college town.
We've been working with Vantage Airport Group.
We are here at the Kansas City Zoo.
I was an intern at Starlight Theater.
I have been completing my clinical rotation at University Health.
We got a lot of real-world, hands-on experience that we wouldn't be able to understand or learn in the classroom.
Being able to go to a local university that has so many connections is incredible.
Kansas City is our classroom.
Kansas City is our classroom.
Kansas City is our classroom.
You will see more of that on social media. And then if you're here a little bit later today, we have a major announcement to make. For the very first time, UMKC will be an official partner of the Kansas City Chiefs. This is very interesting because the Chiefs reached out to us and said, would you consider this partnership? Of course, there's a financial implication on UMKC for this, but it is a very, very strong brand, so we are happy to be doing this. So Curators, you most probably have this very exclusive shirt. Our city, our team. What you see on the screen is what we'll be advertising, Kansas City's University, Kansas City team. And we're delighted about this. This will include internships and scholarships for our students from the Chiefs, opportunities to go shadow people, their front office people, their back office people, hopefully some interviews with off-helmet players, etc. So this is really, really exciting, and as you know, the Chiefs are big here in Kansas City. And then very quickly, we do a lot with community engagement. We are immersed in this community, so we do a lot of things with system UM Extension Service as well. We actually have a full engagement month now, not just a week. We do a lot of activities with the symphony, entrepreneurship, with the women's soccer team, KC Current Watch Party. And last year's engagement month yielded 6,500 people coming in, 85,000 digital engagements, different community partners from campus as well as external community partners. Our staff is outstanding. The staff are the glue that hold the institution together and make it go. And many, many outstanding staff, they recognize for their excellence in different areas. As you can see that the staff council is very active. They do community outreach events from blood drives to food donations and much more. And then we have also started doing campus-wide events like go to the Royals game together, which was a big hit. 1,500 of us showed up at the game. And then if you're going to visit the Kansas City Zoo sometime, go to the kangaroo exhibit. We have a new partnership with the zoo, and over there you can learn the whole story of how the kangaroo became the mascot for UMKC. Can always talk about our students. As you can see, they're hitting it out of the ballpark. They have NIH Scholars Program that is very, very exclusive. The humanities and social sciences folks are winning national awards, and then as well as pharmacy. We always are so proud of our students. And then let me just say, in terms of we are geared up for athletics. A couple of additional remarks I wanted to make about that when athletic director talked about the GSR, the graduation rates, and he said we had 95%. The average for D1 schools is about 78%, so you can see the gap. And also, in terms of donors, he said he started with 105. That number now, what he's brought it up to in the space of 4 years, is 800 plus. So we are making good progress. And come to the KU game. Brandon said the other game is a winnable game in Colorado, but I go into each game thinking this is winnable, so what if it's KU? With that, I will conclude, and Curator Lehman, back to you.
Okay, are there any questions for the Chancellor?
I would like to make, making a comment. I was able to spend last Monday on campus with the Chancellor when we came up for the St. Joe meeting, and it's an exciting place. The enthusiasm of the students and your staff and faculty. I got to meet the deans in a dean meeting, and it's exciting. And thank you for all the work you're doing, and your staff and your faculty. And it starts and ends with the students. And they were very energetic, very nice.
Well, thank you.
It was excellent to see.
That means a lot to us, and you're saying that means a lot to us as people are listening in. Thank you.
Real quick, I want to commend you for the health sciences building, the medical school building that you're building. That's going to be a great thing for the city. I did have one question I saw. You said it'd be able to better facilitate the Health Equity Institute. What is that?
That's an institute that does a lot of research in terms of health outcomes, community research. And so that works with communities that do not participate in healthcare at the same time. So they are funded by NIH mostly to look at different ways how to approach bringing those communities to get healthcare into the fold. And then the Jackson County is also funding them. So they take the students as not as many faculty, but mostly students that go out and work in those communities to encourage those communities to get health screening, vaccines, et cetera, that whatever the recommendation of the experts, medical experts is at that time. And it's a new approach that is actually being really well received by NIH.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I would like to make a quick comment. You know, Molly, I just want to commend you for, I believe you greatly improved the university in almost every area over the last several years. And I love the branding. I love that you're making it Kansas City's university. And I just think you've done a tremendous job. Thank you.
Thank you, Curator. I would again deflect a little bit and say it's my team, faculty, staff, and students, and they're doing an awesome job. I would agree on that.
This is Bob. I'm really impressed with your presentation and the overall operations of your university, and I would echo the branding is very impressive. In my view, I think you're doing a great job. It looks like things are really popping for your university. I congratulate you.
Thank you, Curator.
President Choi?
Are there others? Well, first of all, point of clarification. You invited the curators to the KU game. It's the UMKC game, right?
I stand corrected.
Yes. But I also want to add that Chancellor Agarwal was hired 5 years ago with the expectation that he would lead the university to grow the endowment, graduation rate, enrollment, and research. And he's done all of that. And with the input that we received from stakeholders, from trustees to curators to students, faculty, and staff, we held a comprehensive review of Dr. Agarwal's performance over the past 5 years, and it was a stunning success, and Chancellor Agarwal has been appointed for another 5-year term. So congratulations.
Thank you.
I think Chancellor Degani has something.
Well, from this side of the aisle, I also want to congratulate Chancellor Agarwal for a wonderful presentation. Frankly, I see parallels to what UMKC has done in Rolla, and every time I hear Chancellor Agarwal and great things that are happening here, we get encouraged and we go back home and we try to emulate some of the work that's going on here. Having said all of that, come April, I want the same amount of time to present S&T without getting slammed for going overtime.
Well,
thank you.
I will no longer be chair at that point, but Mo, I'm sorry, Chancellor Degani, I've never seen you leave a minute on the table. And I kept checking my watch because all those people that have Chiefs tickets knew he went 20 minutes over. So, but it was so good, nobody looks like nobody complained.
That's the trick, Mo. I'm just learning from the guru, you. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, pats on the back?
Rue up.
Rue up. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to keep this moving and hopefully get back on track a little, or catch up some time. Our next action item is to approve a resolution recognizing Greg Hoberock for his service to the board. Greg is unable to be with us here today. However, I would like to share with you a few remarks from his resolution. And if you want to hold up the resolution so people can see it, it is here. And if you would like to read it in totality, it is right there. But some of the highlights from that are Curator Hoberock advocated for administrative and financial efficiencies through innovative operational changes. He served as a member of the Administrative Cost Working Group during the COVID pandemic and looked at cost, auxiliary services, and space plan. And he encouraged and challenged university leaders to think outside the box in strategic thinking and solving issues. With that, may I have a motion and a second to approve the resolution recognizing the dedication and service of Greg Hoberock to the University of Missouri system?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please vote aye.
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 Opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the resolution is passed. For our last action item this morning, I would like to ask if there's any items for the good and welfare of the board.
I have one. I wanted to congratulate Curator Graves and our General Counsel Mark Mangini for their inclusion in the 50 Missourians You Should Know. And talking to Dennis Boone with Ingram's, multiple people nominated them for this. So they are wildly heralded and certainly well respected, and we're excited for this recognition on both of their behalves.
And our General Counsel, Tom, looks like he wants to say a few things.
I've never done that. I don't know why.
Okay, and finally, we need a resolution to go in executive session. May I have a motion and a second by the board to move into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Cindy, will you please call the roll?
Curator Blitz,
Yes.
Curator Burnsick,
Yes.
Curator Fry,
Yes.
Curator Graves,
Yes.
Curator Holloway,
Yes.
Curator Lehman,
Yes.
Curator Sinkfield,
Yes.
Curator Winokur,
Yes.
Curator Williams.
Yes.
You have all votes in favor.
Thank you, Cindy. This concludes the public portion of the board meeting today. As always, the board thanks everyone for their time and their reports. President Choi and I will be available in looking at the back of the room. We will be available in Christian, huh?
Don't want the time.
We will be available in room 402 in 10 minutes for a press conference. Everyone else, please go enjoy lunch, and we will catch up with you after that is concluded. Thank you.